This is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer for June 2nd, 2022. So interesting this week, I have started and been accepted to the Twitter super followers. And so basically that means Twitter super follows. That means that you can super follow me on Twitter now, and you can actually get some additional content. I'll be sharing a lot about SEO and domain names, case study examples, code examples, and a lot of things that I cannot normally get. Things, SEO audit tools, and for example, my SEO auditing process that I have, and template that I have been using for over 10 years now to do SEO audits and technical SEO audits. So things like that will be shared with my super followers. It does cost $4.99 per month, and to super follow me and get access to all of that, and actually get access to additional consulting time and specific questions and so forth. So you may want to check that out. You do have to either use an iOS or Android phone to super follow me, or I believe it may be available through one of the Twitter app. However, I have not tested and seen if that's available, but anyway, you may want to check that out. So Twitter, super follow me and get all sorts of additional info and access to everything. So also I've created a Clubhouse club and called SEO and Domains. I will be hosting a room at least once a week there soon, probably starting next week. So digital marketing news for this week, May 22 core update, Google core update. It's actually been going on for about a week or so. It was announced last week, and we're at the point where Google, has made a lot of changes to sites, and you may see changes in rankings. Google has not actually gone back and fixed what they broke when they applied this Google core update. So keep in mind, so normally the process is they apply the update to everything, and then they go back and figure out, especially, maybe even through, user feedback, like us complaining that certain types of sites and are having issues and not ranking. So Google hasn't gone back. They normally go back and fix what they broke. So I would wait another week, watch the rankings, and at that point, you'll be able to actually go back and see, and the rankings will have settled down a little bit more. And so there might be, you may be, you might be seeing some really good changes and better rankings. Or you may have actually, your rankings may have gone down a lot, but in fact, there's still a chance that there's going to be changes, so additional changes. So I would, because they haven't gone back and fixed what they broke during when they applied the Google core update. So like I said, wait at least another week before making any changes or major changes due to rankings and so forth. So RankSense is a technology that was created a couple years ago by Hamlet Batista, and I believe it included Google Sheets and AI and Cloudflare technology, and it has actually been acquired. So Hamlet Batista's technology has been acquired by SEOClarity. I've not used SEOClarity, but I do have some friends who work there, and I understand it is a very good tool. So at some point, I will probably do an SEOClarity write-up and so forth, and review and so forth. So like I said, RankSense has been acquired by SEOClarity. It's SEOClarity.net and RankSense.com, RankSense. So Google is actually, so let's talk about article structure data and schema markup code. So Google has actually created an author markup help guide. We know, marking up and basically telling the search engines through schema markup who authored an article is helpful, because especially if there's an author like myself who writes a lot and has authored articles. So anyway, so in the Google Help, there is now a page, Google Author Markup, and for structure or article structured data. And so that includes suggestions by Google, for example, including all authors, obviously, of the article in the markup, specifying multiple authors, that there actually were multiple authors, use additional fields that are available to you, and always specify the author's name in the author.name property, and that apparently is fairly key. And obviously, you want to use the author. When you do the markup, you want to be consistent. So if that author has written articles in for other websites, then you would want to make sure that, for example, if the names used previously on the articles and bylines was Susan Smith, then you would not want to change it on this article and the markup. Don't change it to Sue Smith. Make sure it is actually, if it's Susan V. Smith or Susan M. Smith, make sure the markup is the same. And so that way Google sees that across the board, especially if that person has a knowledge panel and is part of the knowledge graph and has a lot of other articles. It helps them decide, helps them see that author. We don't necessarily know at this point whether or not authorship is a ranking factor, whether or not it matters who wrote the article. There may be something that is on Google's radar, and I know it has been on. They've been looking at it, and they have that availability. They've had it for years. In fact, they could actually see in an article where it says, by Bill Hartzer or by Susan Smith or whatever it is, they can actually see that particular, the author name. So anyway, so if you Google author or search Google for author markup best practices, you're going to see that. And like I said, it's that is a new guide by Google. So moving on. So there's a rumor out there, and I've seen it in multiple places, that Apple is going to announce a new search engine next week. This is probably not the first time that Google has actually, or not Google, rather that there's been a rumor like this, that, Apple's going to have their own search engine. I probably have, honestly, going back probably 10 years or more, that there's been a rumor or a mention that Apple will have their own search engine. My thoughts on it, keep in mind, there is a previous agreement, and I know, between Google and Apple, basically a non-compete agreement that basically Apple won't have their own search engine that will compete with Google's search engine. So we know Apple has their own crawler, and what they've been doing with that, we don't know. I have not seen reports of increased crawling activity by Apple. Usually, if they were, I suspect that if they were going to launch a search engine, that we would, everybody would basically be seeing additional crawling activity by Apple's crawler. However, I'm not really seeing that being mentioned. We have this agreement between Google and Apple that basically says Apple won't have their own search engine to compete with Google. So we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. I suspect that they may launch a new search engine and may change some functionality and maybe call it the Apple search engine or something else related to that, or iSearch or something like that. But it might be actually, when they first launched it, it might be powered by Google. And so then, and just like Yahoo is powered by Bing and Microsoft Bing's search results. So even though the Yahoo search results are going to be different than Bing, the majority of the search results are in Yahoo are powered by Bing. So we'll see what happens next week. I suspect, it's just a rumor, and I don't suspect anything. But again, I look forward to seeing another search engine competing, especially with Google and with Bing as well. Because I do remember the old days in the 90s, where we had multiple search engines that had just as much traffic as the others. We had, Alta Vista and Excite and Microsoft's search engine and everything. So, and then we had Google. So we had several in the past. Now, yeah, there's less and less. But again, that would make a big difference if we did have a unique Apple search engine. So John, moving on. So John Mcalpin has an interesting search engine land article I'd like to talk about. So there's been 4, he writes in his article about 4 tech SEO issues that the SEO tools basically won't show you. And so this is interesting, caught my eye. I do have known John. I have worked with him on some projects in the past. However, this is interesting. So there's these 4 SEO related issues. So when the concept is when you use a SEO tool, whether it's SEO Rush's audit tool, Screaming Frog, SEO Spider, Sitebulb, OnCrawl, Deep Crawl, etc., or even SiteLiner. When you run those tools, they basically crawl your site from the home page or whatever page you give them to start with. So that's fine. So a lot of the search engine audit tools will come back and say, here's an issue, this is an issue, and so forth. They'll identify that. Well, keep in mind, like for example, Sitebulb will give you a list of hints and so forth, which is extremely helpful. I use it for all my SEO audits. And so anyway, and same thing with OnCrawl and Deep Crawl, they give you a dashboard and so forth, and everything. But these 4 issues, they don't necessarily by default give you these. So the number 1 I think that you really need to check is Canonical to redirect loop. So basically meaning that you have a page, let's say, here's an example. Okay, you have a page that on your e-commerce site, and you're selling t-shirts, and the t-shirts come in small, medium, large, XL, 2XL, 3XL, 7XL, whatever. Okay, and they come in, let's say 10 different colors. So each of those pages, let's say 5 different sizes times 10 different colors, you multiply that out, you have a bunch of pages. You don't want all of those pages, like the XL in gray. You don't want that page is essentially duplicate of the XL in red. So what you'll do is you'll have a canonical tag, and the canonical tag should point to the main product page for that. And it's just the differences, different sizes, different colors, etc. Now, that's the way you should handle it. However, if that canonical tag, all those pages, let's say 20 pages, different colors, different sizes, all of those pages have a canonical tag pointing back to the main product page. And the main product page at one point, is now redirecting to another page, another URL, because maybe you've discontinued it, or maybe you have, whatever. You've changed your category. Anyway, the URL changed, and you have a redirect from the product page. But you have all these 50 pages out there that have canonical tag pointing to the product page that redirects. That's an issue. Okay, and most SEO tools do not find that for you. Okay, and they don't point that out. So, like I said, and you're going through the SEO tool, you're looking at the results, and everything is fine. Everything seems fine. Well, it's actually not. So what I would say is, or what I like to say is that the issue, and John points this out in his article, is that basically to fix that or to check it, that additional check, you will want to crawl the site as normal, get all the URLs, get the list of canonical tags. Okay, normally can export those. Take that list and then crawl those URLs and see if any of those redirect. Okay, so that's the way to handle this is. I am a brand ambassador for OnCrawl, and I've reached out to OnCrawl and told them, hey, this is something you should check for, and that that should be fairly easy for them to add. Now, most SEO tools will not identify hacked pages, or if it could be a URL, could be a page on your site that's a normal page. However, the content on that has been, and typically when a hacker comes in, they'll go to one of your pages and they'll insert code and JavaScript code, for example, and then they will have they'll have outgoing links to their sites. So basically that's one way. They may add a bunch of pages to your site. That happens, and I've seen it and I've had to clean it up. So basically, in a lot of cases, they're adding that code by via JavaScript. And so what you want to do is make sure when you run the crawler, make sure that crawler is rendering JavaScript and running it that way. So for example, when it does, by default, most crawlers do not render JavaScript. So you want to turn that on. Screaming Frog, you have to tell it specifically to render the pages in JavaScript. Same thing on crawl. I'm not sure about Sitebulb. I believe it's turned on by default, but I'll have to check. You just want to make sure when you run it that you're, same thing. JavaScript links. So basically, if you're using a tool like InLinks or some other tools that are generating JavaScript links automatically, or the links only show up when JavaScript is rendered, like in the browser for a normal person. Most crawlers have that JavaScript rendering turned off by default. So you want to turn it on and run it. It takes a little longer to run the crawl, especially if you have thousands of pages. However, it's worth it because you really need to fix that out. And same thing with content hidden in my JavaScript. Again, turn on the JavaScript rendering. We know that the search engines now, especially Google, they will crawl your site with JavaScript turned on. And so they will see that additional content. They'll see that, those links and so forth that way. So finally, I want to give you heads up on a site that I find interesting and I'm going to be using. And actually I'm using on a regular basis for some of my client work. So PIMEYES, PIMEYES.com. It's a website that is powered by AI, and essentially it helps you find photos. So PIMEYES.com, you can go to that site and you can either take a selfie, you click a button and it will open up your camera and you will see specifically that where you can take a selfie, and or you can upload a photo like a headshot or something like that of you, or actually I recommend doing it for your kid, a photo of your kids and so forth. Basically what happens is they take that photo, the AI looks at your face and looks at the facial features, and even though if you take the photo right now, it will find photos of you that are on the web. And most of them, hopefully, those photos exist. In some cases, if I were to take, a photo of, a relative and take that photo, that headshot of primarily of their face, and run through PimEyes, it will actually find photos that in a lot of cases I didn't even know existed. And so that's interesting, because if you were to, for example, take, of your kids, you don't want your kids' photos out there everywhere. So you would take a photo of them and then run it through there, and then make sure there's no photos of there, and make sure the photos that are out there. So I do have a client I'm working with that is concerned about certain photos that have appeared out on the web that she doesn't like. So I was able to find a bunch of photos. I mean, literally more than you could imagine on websites out there of this person. So and obviously we get we can get a copy of the URLs and try to get those taken down and removed from the internet. So yeah, there's a site called tineye.com, TINEYE. You upload a photo or an image, and it will find where that image exists on the web. However, you have to, it'll only find photo, for example, that particular photo, it won't find others. Same thing with Google reverse image search. You upload a photo or crop a photo of somebody, it'll find it. However, PimEyes does something different, where they're using that facial technology. And let's say you were at a conference and you are walking around the conference, and somebody takes a photo and you are in the background of that photo. There's and PimEyes will probably find that photo and you did not know existed of you. Maybe if it's a photo, it could be a photo when you were a child, because they're using the facial recognition technology. It's not just, like I said, it's not just that particular photo that you're uploading. You are actually, using finding photos of you or people with very similar facial features of you. So that said, just about out of time for this week. This has been the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for June 2nd, 2022. Thanks for joining me again. If you want some additional content, some additional help, some additional tips on anything digital marketing, SEO, domain name tips, etc., and some additional things that I normally don't share anywhere else, follow me on as a super follower on Twitter, and we will I will get you additional content and things that really help you do your job. So thanks again for joining me this afternoon. June 2nd, 2022, Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer. Again, you can find me online, and we'll talk to you again this time next week.